The woman in the wool coat said it loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "You don't belong here. Staff entrance is around the back." Théodore Blanchet was standing in the atrium of the Auberge Sainte-Claire, a heritage hotel in Old Quebec that his grandmother had once cleaned floors in for 32 years. He was wearing a canvas jacket worn at the elbows, boots that had seen 4 winters, and a toque pulled low against the February cold. He had a duffel bag over one shoulder and a coffee from the Tim Hortons 3 blocks away, still warm in his hand. He didn't answer her. He just looked at her, steady, patient. The way a man looks at something he's seen before and already understands. The woman was Marguerite Fillion, 47 years old, 3rd-generation Quebec City money, her family name on a plaque in the hotel's grand corridor. She wore the kind of quiet jewelry that doesn't need to be loud. Her expression said she had never been wrong about anything in her life, and she saw no reason to start now. "I said," she repeated, taking one step closer. "Staff entrance is around the back. This lobby is for guests." Théodore set his coffee on the concierge's counter. He pulled back his toque with one hand. "I know where the lobby is," he said. "I used to mop it." That wasn't a threat. It wasn't even meant to sting. It was just true. When he was 16, he'd worked weekend mornings here, pushing a mop in circles across these same marble floors while the guests slept upstairs. His grandmother had gotten him the job. She'd worked here so long the maintenance staff knew her name better than management did. Marguerite's lip curled. "Then you know this isn't the place for you." Her hand came up fast, palm flat. The sound of it hitting his cheek carried across the atrium like something dropped. The man behind the front desk went still. A woman near the elevator turned. A teenager by the gift shop looked up from his phone. Théodore didn't move. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't step back. He absorbed it the same way the old marble floors absorbed everything, quietly, without shifting. Marguerite fixed her coat, satisfied. She didn't know that a university student waiting near the coat check had already pressed record. She didn't know who Théodore Blanchet was. She was about to. Quebec City in February is not the city tourists come for in summer. The snow doesn't fall so much as settle, layering itself over the stone walls and the copper rooftops until the whole upper town looks like something pressed under glass. The St. Lawrence is half frozen. The horse-drawn carriages are gone. The restaurants are full of locals, not visitors, and the conversations are different, quieter, longer, more honest. Théodore had driven up from Montreal the night before. He'd booked a room at the Auberge Sainte-Claire under his company name, which nobody at the front desk had connected to a face yet. He'd asked them not to. He'd done that deliberately. He had been doing a lot of things deliberately for the last 4 years. His assistant had called at 6 that morning. The building permit's cleared. The Dufferin parcel is officially in Blanchke Group's name. Good, he'd said. Don't announce anything yet. He had a reason to be in this city before any announcement. A reason that had nothing to do with the acquisition, and everything to do with a woman who had died in a hospital on the Rue de l'Hôpital Général 17 years ago, waiting for a surgery her insurance had refused to cover. His grandmother, Cécile Blanchet, had worked at the Auberge Sainte-Claire for 32 years. She'd started as a chambermaid in her early 30s, raised Théodore's mother in a 3.5 on Rue Saint-Vallier, saved every dollar she could, and put her faith in a group insurance plan through her employer that she'd paid premiums on for 26 years. When she was 61, she was diagnosed with a cardiac condition that required surgery. Treatable, highly manageable with timely intervention. The claim was denied, the insurer. Fillion Assurance et Services Financiers, a company that had been operating in Quebec since the 1970s, rejected her application on the grounds of a pre-existing exclusion. A single note in her medical file from 11 years earlier, a routine mention of elevated resting heart rate, flagged as a prior condition. By the time Cécile could afford the surgery through other means, by the time Théodore had taken every shift available at the warehouse job and his mother had borrowed from relatives who could barely afford it, it had been 7 months. 7 months is a long time when a heart valve is failing. She died on a Tuesday in November. Théodore was 22 years old. He sat beside her bed and held her hand and watched her face go still and made her a promise he hadn't fully articulated yet, because he didn't know yet what it would cost him to keep it. The denial letter was in a shoebox under her bed. He found it 2 weeks after the funeral. At the bottom, in a firm, authoritative signature, Édouard Fillion, Directeur des Sinistres, Marguerite Fillion's father. The video was 49 seconds long. It was filmed by a 20-year-old Laval architecture student named Jules Paquin, who had been waiting in the hotel lobby for his mother and had pulled out his phone out of boredom 3 seconds before Marguerite Fillion raised her hand. He posted it without much thought. A caption: "Witnessed this today in the Auberge Sainte Claire lobby. The man did nothing. She just walked up and hit him." By midnight it had 80,000 views. By morning it was on every French-language outlet in Quebec. By afternoon the English-language wire services had picked it up, a woman from a prominent Quebec City family, striking a man in a hotel lobby. Him not flinching, her walking away like it hadn't happened. The comments were not kind to Marguerite. She didn't care at first. Her father's lawyers were already on the phone by 10 a.m. A statement was being drafted. The man had been trespassing. She had been startled. She had felt threatened. The language was careful and well-practiced. What nobody had looked into yet was who the man was. In Montreal, an investigative journalist named Veronique Sauvé had been following a story for 6 months that kept going nowhere. She covered financial malfeasance for a digital outlet that had somehow survived 3 rounds of media consolidation, and she had a file on Fillion Assurance et Services Financiers that was 40 pages thick and going stale. The company had been dissolved in 2019, folded into the family's property holdings after a class action suit, filed in 2012, settled in 2016, sealed, had made the insurance business untenable. The settlement had been paid. The NDAs had been signed. The claimants had moved on, or tried to, or hadn't been given much choice. Veronique had been trying to find someone who would talk. She watched a lobby video 3 times. There was something in the exchange that didn't sit right. The man hadn't reacted like someone caught off guard. He'd absorbed the slap with the composure of someone who had been waiting for something like this for a very long time, and had already decided how he was going to respond. She started with the hotel's booking records, a freedom of information request, a source in municipal property registration who owed her a favor. 2 days later, she had a name: Théodore Blanchet, Blanchet Group, Montreal, Real Estate and Community Development. Founded 2014. She searched for 15 minutes and then sat back in her chair. Blanchet Group had acquired 11 properties in underserved Montreal neighborhoods in 10 years. 3 had been converted into affordable housing cooperatives. 2 were community health centers. 1 was a mixed-income complex with a daycare on the ground floor. The company's most recent acquisition, filed quietly, no press release, was a heritage parcel in Old Quebec on the Dufferin Strip, where the Fillion family had been trying to finalize a major development deal for the past 8 months. Veronique stared at the screen for a long moment. She picked up her phone. The man who picked up her call on the 3rd ring had a voice that was careful and unhurried, in the way of someone who has learned that impatience is a kind of loss. "Miss Sauvé, Mr. Blanchet." She had her recorder running. "I've been looking into Fillion Assurance." Silence. Not the silence of someone caught off guard, the other kind. "I know you have," he said. "I found the class action records, the ones that were sealed." "Some of them," he said. "Not all of them. There's a claim file for a Cécile Blanchet, denied in 2006, denied on the basis of a pre-existing notation that her own physician said was not clinically significant." Longer silence. "She was my grandmother," he said. Veronique set her pen down. She didn't need it. "The signature on the denial," she said. "Edouard Fillion." His voice didn't change. "Director of claims, Marguerite's father, and you came to Quebec City." "I came to see if anything had changed," he said. "In 17 years. It hadn't changed." That was the thing Théodore hadn't been able to say to anyone yet, not in a way that didn't sound like bitterness. But it wasn't bitterness. It was something more precise than that. It was the result of a careful, years-long experiment in the hypothesis that people, given enough time and enough distance from their worst moments, might find their way toward something better. He had come to Quebec City in a worn jacket and second-hand boots, to walk the streets where her grandmother had spent her life and to see, with his own eyes, whether the people who had shaped this place had grown. Marguerite Fillion had answered that question in the Auberge Sainte Claire lobby at 11:20 on a Tuesday morning. He told Veronique all of it. The shoebox, the denial letter, the warehouse shift, the promise he'd made in that hospital room that he hadn't yet fully understood. How he'd built Blanchet Group not as a weapon but as a response. Not to tear anything down, but to build the things that had been withheld. "You could have gone after them years ago," Veronique said. You have the resources. My grandmother didn't raise my mother to destroy things, he said. She raised her to build them. And my mother raised me the same way. But you came here. I came to give them a chance to show me who they are now. He paused. Marguerite showed me. Veronique closed her notebook. She had been a journalist for 12 years. She had interviewed cabinet ministers and convicted fraudsters and grieving parents and whistleblowers. She had a specific sense for the moment when a story stopped being about events and started being about something true. This was that moment. I want to publish this, she said. All of it. Tell the truth, he said. Even the parts that make me look like I had an agenda. Because I did have one. I came here knowing who she was. A pause. I just didn't know yet who I was going to be about it. And now you do? Getting there, he said. There's someone else you should hear from first. Someone who has been inside that family for 3 years and is looking for a way out. His name was Sébastien Vaillant. He had been engaged to Marguerite Fillion's daughter, Isabeau, for 2 years. He was 34, a civil engineer, the kind of quiet and methodical person who made detailed lists and kept his feelings in a controlled storage facility somewhere deep in his chest. He met Veronique in a parking garage, off Boulevard Laurier on a Thursday evening, engine running, window cracked against the cold. I've been looking for something that gives me a reason, he said. Not just a reason to leave, a reason to speak. He handed her a manila folder through the window. Inside, internal family communications, emails between Edouard Fillion and the family's legal firm in the weeks following the lobby video. 3 pages. Careful, precise, damning. Handle the footage, Veronique read aloud. Handle the journalist in Montreal. This cannot reach the Dufferin acquisition discussion. She looked up, the property deal. Edouard found out 6 weeks ago who owns the Dufferin parcel. Sebastian's voice was flat. He's been trying to kill the Blanchet Group story to protect a $45 million negotiation. He told Isabeau the lobby incident was a misunderstanding. He told her the man had been aggressive. He slid a second document through the window, a building transfer record, the Dufferin parcel, Blanchet Group, transferee. Théodore Blanchet owns the property where the Fillion family has been trying to build their legacy project for 2 years. Veronique looked at the document. The irony was not subtle. Edouard doesn't care about his daughter's reputation, Sébastien said. He cares about the deal. He's been managing her the same way he managed those claim files. He stopped. I watched Théodore standing in that lobby, after she hit him, after the police came. He shook his head. He knew exactly who he was. I've spent 3 years in that family and I don't know who I am anymore. He opened his car door. I'm done protecting people who've never protected anyone but themselves. The police had come to the Auberge St. Clair within 20 minutes of the incident, called by hotel management. 2 officers. The first, a young constable who looked at Théodore's canvas jacket and made a judgment in under 3 seconds. The second, a woman in her 40s who looked at everything more slowly. Théodore was asked to wait. He waited. He gave his name when asked. His voice was level. It was the second officer who pulled up the booking record, who saw the name on the reservation, who went still in the way people go still when something they assumed turns out to be wrong. Théodore's legal counsel arrived 40 minutes later, a woman named Françoise Arbor, senior partner, who entered the hotel with the specific calm of someone who never needs to raise her voice because she has never once needed to. My client was assaulted in a hotel lobby where he is a registered guest, she said to the duty manager. He did not respond. He did not resist. He did not raise his voice. Your lobby camera confirms this. I'll need that footage by end of business today, along with the contact information for any staff who were present. The duty manager, who had worked in hospitality for 22 years and had a finely tuned sense for when a situation was about to become much larger than it appeared, wrote everything down without argument. Théodore was released without any suggestion of wrongdoing. The lobby footage was preserved. 3 staff members provided witness statements, all consistent. Outside, in the cold February air, he stood on the stone sidewalk and looked up at the facade of the Auberge St. Clair. The iron lanterns, the carved limestone, the brass letters of the name above the entrance, unchanged from the 32 years his grandmother had come through the service door. He thought about her hands, how they'd looked after a Sunday shift, how she'd come home and make soup and not complain, not once, not in any way he'd heard. He thought about what he was going to do now. He already knew. The Fillion legal team moved quickly. A cease and desist to Veronique's outlet letters to Jules Paquin and two other witnesses. The language was polished and expensive. Any statement connecting Marguerite Fillion's conduct to a pattern of family behavior would be pursued aggressively through civil proceedings. Veronique's editor called her on a Friday. "We got a letter." "I know. Veronique, we're 4 people and a server in Rosemont. We cannot fight Fillion lawyers." "I know," she said. "The story is dead." She hung up, looked at her files. 40 pages, 6 months, and a name on a denial letter from 2006. The story wasn't dead. It was just waiting. She called a friend at the Régie de l'Assurance, someone who had been quietly sympathetic to her investigation for months without ever going on record. "I need everything you can find on Fillion Assurance claim, denials from 2000 to 2015, she said. "Especially anything flagged as pre-existing exclusions. Veronique, some of those are sealed." "I know," she said. But not all of them. 3 days later, a scanned file arrived in her inbox. 23 denial families. The pattern was not subtle when you saw it laid out. Claim after claim rejected on the basis of minor prior notations, almost none of them clinically significant, almost all of them from claimants who could not afford to fight back, each letter signed with the same confident hand. Edouard Fillion, Directeur des Sinistres. Veronique found 8 of the 23 families. Most didn't want to talk, too afraid. But a woman named Paulette Gravel did. She was 68. She'd been a school bus driver in Lévis for 28 years. Her husband had been denied cardiac coverage in 2009 on a pre-existing exclusion. He'd died 14 months later while they were still trying to appeal. They used words, Paulette said. She was sitting across from Veronique in a kitchen that smelled of coffee and something baked. Big words, bureaucratic words, to make it sound like it wasn't their fault. She shook her head. "But my husband is gone and Edouard Fillion's name is still on a building." Veronique wrote that down. She also obtained the original class action settlement terms, sealed, but a source slid the summary across a counter in a government office without making eye contact. The Fillion family had paid out $14 million in 2016, $14 million to make 23 families, and however many more who had never filed go away. Cécile Blanchet's estate had received nothing. Her claim had been excluded from the class action on a technicality. She had died before the filing period opened. Her name was not in the settlement. Theodore had found that out 2 years after her death. He'd cried once, alone in the apartment he was renting in Verdun, and then he'd gone back to work. The gala at the Chateau Frontenac was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday of February, the Fillion Foundation's annual fundraiser for cultural heritage preservation. An event that Marguerite chaired and her father attended in a dark suit with a handkerchief in the breast pocket. The event would be photographed. There would be speeches. There would be local officials and business names on the guest list, and the wine would be good, and Marguerite would be radiant and composed, and in control of everything she surveyed. What she didn't know, walking into the chateau that Saturday in a gown the color of deep water, was that the building across the street, the Dufferin parcel, the Fillion family's $45 million legacy project site, had a new name on the development permits. She found out when she got to her table and found a folded card at her place setting, not from Theodore, from Sébastien, who had resigned from the engagement the week before, in a letter that Isabeau's mother had dismissed as cold feet. The card contained one line, handwritten. "Ask your father who Cécile Blanchet was. Quebec Superior Court. Court. March." A civil proceeding? The gallery held Paulette Gravel and her daughter, Veronique Sauvé, who had finally found a national outlet willing to publish and had run the story 3 days before the hearing. Jules Paquin, who had refused his witness feedback and showed up anyway. 2 of the other families from the denial file. A pastor from a parish in Limoilou who had known Cécile Blanchet for 30 years. Theodore sat at the plaintiff's table in a suit that was well cut and unremarkable. No flourish, no statement. Françoise Arbor sat beside him, her folders stacked with the precision of someone who had been doing this for a long time and was very calm about it. The evidence was presented in order: the lobby footage, the body camera from the hotel's security system, the prior incident records Veronique had uncovered, 2 other individuals removed from Fillion-affiliated properties. In the past 5 years, both complaints dismissed, the internal emails Sébastien had provided, the denial letter, the medical file, the death record. Edouard Fillion, Directeur des Sinistres, claim number FAF 206441, Eleanor, Cécile Blanchet. Status. Denied. Françoise read it aloud. The room was quiet enough that you could hear the building settle. Then she said, Cécile Blanchet died on November 14th, 2006. Her grandson was present. He was 22 years old. He is the plaintiff before you today. Marguerite turned to look at her father. He didn't meet her eyes. Daddy. Her voice was low enough that it might not have carried, but the courtroom was very quiet. Did you know? When you told me it was handled, did you know who he was? Edouard Fillion looked at the table in front of him. He looked at it the way a man looks at something he has been trying not to see for 17 years. He said nothing. Marguerite's face did something complicated. Not the performance of distress she'd arranged at the charity gala. Something underneath that. Something that had been waiting in a locked room for a long time and had just found the door open. She looked at Théodore. He looked back at her. He didn't forgive her in that moment. He didn't condemn her either. He just looked. The way you look at something that is finally exactly what it is, the judge ruled. Compensatory damages of $340,000. A formal requirement for Fillion Holdings to undergo regulatory review on their remaining insurance-adjacent activities. The lobby assault documented and referred for separate civil proceedings. Edouard Fillion's legal team released a statement that afternoon. The claim decisions of Fillion Assurance were made in accordance with the policy terms and regulatory standards of the time. It was not a denial. It was not an apology. It was the statement of a man who had been making this particular calculation his entire professional life. 4 weeks later, the Dufferin parcel in Old Quebec, the construction hoardings had come down. What had been an empty lot behind a heritage stone facade was now clearly becoming something. Scaffolding, workers, a project sign that had gone up the week before. Centre Cécile Blanchet, Espace Communautaire et Services de Santé. The Blanchet Group had donated the settlement in full, matched it from the foundation, and transferred the development rights to a community land trust that would hold the property in perpetuity. The ground floor would be a community health clinic. The second and third floors, affordable housing units, 15 of them, with priority placement for families on the city's waiting list. The fourth floor, a community gathering space available to non-profits and residents associations at no cost. The building would stand on the same street where Cécile Blanchet had walked to work for 32 years. Théodore stood outside in the March cold, watching the workers. He had the same canvas jacket on, the same boots. Veronique approached him from the sidewalk, recorder in her bag. She had published 3 pieces now, and a 4th was coming. The Fillion Foundation's gala had been cancelled. Edouard was under investigation. Marguerite had not appeared publicly since the hearing. You could have had the building, Veronique said. You could have put your name on it. It is my name on it, he said. Just not the part of my name that matters to the people you're thinking of. A pause. Paulette Gravel called me, he said. She'd like to be at the opening. She will be, Veronique said. Théodore watched the facade. The stone was old, older than the Fillion name, older than most of the things people in this city treated as permanent. My grandmother used to say something, he said. She said, don't waste yourself on what's already broken. Build the next thing. He pulled his toque down against the cold. She was right about most things. Marguerite Fillion did not go to trial for the assault. The civil matter was settled. She did not speak publicly. People who knew her said she had stopped going to the events she used to chair, that she had moved to a smaller apartment, that she had begun, in the careful and private way of someone dismantling a life they had always taken for granted, to ask questions about her father she had never thought to ask before. What she would become on the other side of those questions was not yet known. Sebastien Vaillant went back to his engineering work in Montreal. He sent Théodore a single text message the week after the hearing. Thank you for not becoming what they are. Edouard Fillion was 71 years old, and every building that bore his family's name now bore a different weight than it had before. His daughter would not return his calls. His business partners were reviewing their positions. His lawyers were expensive and efficient and could not give him back the one thing the ruling had finally, irrevocably taken: his certainty that what he had done had been reasonable. Théodore Blanchet drove back to Montreal on a Sunday morning, the St. Lawrence gray and broad beside the highway, the city pulling itself slowly out of winter. He had his grandmother's photograph on his phone, not the one from near the end, but an earlier one, her in a yellow dress at some family occasion, laughing at something just outside the frame, her hands still strong, her eyes certain that the world was worth the effort she was putting into it. He looked at it at a red light. Then the light changed, and he kept driving. She always said, "Don't let what's been done to you become what you do." She said it the way she said most things, plainly, without drama, as if it were simply obvious. He had tried to build a life that proved her right. The center would open in September. The waiting list for the clinic was already long. It was enough. It was more than enough. If you've ever been looked through instead of looked at, if someone decided who you were before you'd said a word, you know what this story is really about. Leave a comment. Tell me yours. And if you haven't subscribed to Rune Stories yet, there's always another truth waiting to be told.